The antiseptic odor that always permeated the clinic clung to my clothes as I secured the back door, my fingers clumsy with the keys in the pitch-black October night. 6 years of working at Paws and Care Veterinary Clinic had taught me to discern the difference between a routine night and one that would irrevocably alter the course of everything. This evening was supposed to be routine. My daughter, Lily, sat on the worn bench near the entrance, her backpack resting at her feet, diligently scribbling in her homework notebook beneath the weak glow of the security light. At 9 years old, she had spent more evenings in this clinic than most kids her age, displaying a patience and understanding that caused a knot of guilt to form in my chest. She deserved far better than a mother who couldn't afford childcare, who brought her to work during evening shifts because there was simply no other viable option. "Almost done, sweetheart," I called out, sorting through the day's accumulated paperwork. My closest friend and colleague, Sarah Collins, had departed an hour earlier, her cheerful wave and promise to cover morning rounds still fresh in my mind. The distinct sound of tires crunching on gravel caused me to look up abruptly. A black SUV was pulling into the parking lot, its headlights slicing through the surrounding darkness. We had officially closed 20 minutes prior, but emergencies, of course, were not bound by business hours. I straightened my posture, watching intently as a man emerged from the driver's side of the vehicle. He was a large, imposing figure, clad in a dark suit that seemed utterly out of place in our modest, unassuming neighborhood clinic. He was carefully carrying something wrapped in a blanket, moving with a sense of urgent purpose toward the entrance. I was already instinctively reaching for my keys again even before he knocked on the door. "We're closed. But if it's an emergency," I began to explain, and then I noticed the unmistakable sight of blood soaking through the fabric he was holding. "My boss's dog," the man said, his voice rough with undisguised concern, "got caught in crossfire. Bullet wound. Our usual vet is out of town, and this was the closest place." Crossfire. The loaded word hung suspended between us, heavy with implications that I desperately didn't want to even begin to consider. But the faint whimper emanating from the bundle in his arms forced my decision. "Bring him in," I said, already moving swiftly toward the surgery prep area. "Lily, go to the break room, please." "Mom, is the dog going to be okay?" Her voice was small, filled with worry. She had undoubtedly inherited my soft spot for animals. "I'm going to do everything I can. Sarah's emergency kit should have her iPad. You can watch something until I'm finished." Lily gathered her belongings without complaint, casting one last concerned glance at the bleeding animal before disappearing down the hallway. The man followed me into the examination room, carefully laying the dog onto the cold steel table. It was a golden retriever, likely 3 or 4 years old, with intelligent eyes that were clouded with pain. "What's his name?" I asked, already rapidly assessing the extent of the wound. "Entry point in the shoulder, possibly still lodged in the muscle tissue." "Duke," he responded. I worked quickly and efficiently, administering pain medication and meticulously setting up for surgery. The man, who introduced himself only as Joseph, watched with a kind of unwavering intensity that suggested he had witnessed far worse injuries than this inflicted on people, most likely. I consciously tried not to dwell on what kind of employer kept staff who spoke so casually about crossfire, who had dogs that were targets for bullets. "How did this happen?" I asked, more to fill the heavy silence than because I genuinely expected to receive an honest answer. "Wrong place, wrong time," Joseph replied tersely. "The boss was leaving a business meeting. Rival organization thought they'd send a message." My hand momentarily stilled. Rival organization. This wasn't a random mugging or some senseless street crime. This was something carefully organized, something undeniably dangerous. But Duke whimpered softly again, and I firmly pushed the rising tide of fear aside. The dog desperately needed me. The surgery ultimately took an hour. The bullet had lodged itself deep within the muscle tissue, miraculously missing the major arteries by mere centimeters. I painstakingly removed it with great care, meticulously stitched the wound closed, and administered a strong dose of antibiotics. By the time I finally finished, my scrubs were thoroughly spattered with blood, and exhaustion was pulling relentlessly at my bones. "He'll need to stay overnight for observation," I said, wearily washing my hands at the sink. I can't let him leave until I'm absolutely certain there's no internal bleeding that I might have missed. Joseph nodded in acknowledgement, pulling out his phone. I'll let the boss know. He stepped away slightly, speaking in low, hushed tones that I couldn't quite discern. When he returned, something subtle in his expression had noticeably shifted. Assessment, perhaps, or even approval. You did good work, he said. The boss will want to thank you personally. He's particular about Duke. That's not necessary. The fee for the emergency surgery will be paid in full, plus compensation for your after-hours work. He pulled out a business card, completely blank except for a single Stark phone number. He'll be in touch. I took the card somewhat reluctantly, unsure of what else to do in that moment. Joseph departed shortly thereafter, promising to return in the morning to check on Duke's condition. I double-checked on the dog one last time, satisfied that his vitals were stable, before finally collecting Lily from the break room. She had fallen sound asleep on the couch, the iPad screen dark beside her. I carefully scooped her up into my arms, marveling, as I always did, at how quickly she was growing, how she was steadily getting too big for me to carry like this. Soon she'd be too heavy, too old to be cradled in my arms. The unexpected thought brought an inexplicable sting to my eyes. In the car, Lily stirred slightly, blinking sleepily. Is the dog okay? He's going to be fine, I assured her gently. We'll check on him tomorrow. You're really good at your job, Mom. The simple, unwavering faith evident in her voice caused my throat to tighten with emotion. Thank you, baby. As I drove us home through Boston's quiet, mostly deserted streets, my thoughts were consumed by the blank business card tucked safely in my pocket, by the enigmatic man named Joseph and his employer who inspired such obvious loyalty, and by the chilling word crossfire and what it truly meant to live in a world where such a term could be offered as a casual explanation. I thought about the old photographs carefully stored in a shoebox under my bed, the ones I had shown Lily countless times over the years. Pictures of a young man with kind, dark eyes and an easy, engaging smile, taken a decade earlier, when the world had still seemed full of endless possibility, before he had inexplicably vanished without so much as a word, leaving me unexpectedly pregnant and completely alone. Lucas Valentesi, the only man I had ever truly loved. The father that Lily asked about with heartbreaking regularity, wanting to know why he had left, if he would ever come back into our lives, and if he ever even thought about them, about us. I always told her the same carefully constructed lie. Your father loved us very much. But sometimes grown-ups make difficult choices. It doesn't mean he didn't care. It was a carefully crafted fabrication. One I had created to protect her from the harsh truth that I genuinely didn't know why he had left. Why, 3 months after he disappeared completely, I had discovered that I was carrying his child. Why every single attempt I had made to locate him had led absolutely nowhere. He had inexplicably transferred out of Boston University mid-semester, changed his personal phone number, and left absolutely no forwarding address. It was as if he had been deliberately erased from existence. I had spent countless months trying desperately to track him down, even hiring a private investigator that I could barely afford at the time. Nothing. Lucas Valentesi had simply and completely vanished. So, I had ultimately done what I felt I had to do. I finished my degree while unexpectedly pregnant, working countless double shifts to somehow pay for veterinary school, painstakingly building a life for Lily from sheer determination and the mountain of student loans I would still be diligently paying off long after she graduated from high school. Sarah had been there for me through absolutely everything, the only true friend who hadn't slowly drifted away when my life had suddenly become so impossibly complicated. Now Lily was 9 years old, bright, exceptionally curious, and undeniably so much like her father that it sometimes physically hurt me just to look at her. She had inherited his strikingly beautiful eyes, that same deep, dark brown that seemed to see directly into your soul, his stubborn chin, and his quick, sharp mind that effortlessly absorbed new information like a sponge. 3 days after Duke's surgery, a thick envelope unexpectedly arrived at the clinic. Inside was full payment for the procedure, generous enough to make me double-check the total amount to ensure it wasn't a mistake, as well as something else. An invitation meticulously printed on heavy, high-quality cream cardstock. Annual charity gala benefiting Boston Animal Welfare Foundation. Fairmont Copley Plaza. Black tie optional. A handwritten note was neatly tucked inside. Your skill saved Duke's life. It would be an honor if you'd attend as my guest. Transport and appropriate attire will be provided. Bring your daughter if you wish. She shouldn't have to wait alone while her mother works. It wasn't signed, but I already instinctively knew who it was from. The mysterious boss who clearly valued his dog enough to send Joseph racing across the city in the middle of the night for emergency care. Part of me desperately wanted to decline the invitation immediately, to keep my distance as far as possible from whatever dangerous world produced men who spoke so casually about Crossfire. But the event was scheduled for a Saturday evening, and Lily had been constantly asking to see Duke again, worried about the sweet-natured retriever who had whimpered so pitifully on my surgery table. And if I was honest with myself, curiosity undeniably gnawed at me. Who was this man? Why did he care enough to invite me to a charity event? I showed the intriguing invitation to Sarah during our lunch break. She whistled softly under her breath. The Fairmont? Jessica? That's serious money. Are you actually going to go? I don't know. It just feels strange. Strange how? Someone's grateful you saved their dog. This is a nice gesture. Joseph mentioned rival organizations, I said quietly. Crossfire, Sarah. I think the man who owns Duke might be. I trailed off, unable to actually say it out loud. Saying it aloud would somehow make it real. Would make it a difficult choice I was actively considering, rather than just something that had simply happened. Sarah's expression grew instantly serious. You think he's connected? Connected? Such a deliberately careful word for what we both silently knew she actually meant. Maybe. I honestly don't know. Probably I'm just overthinking it. Do you actually want to go? Did I? The practical, rational part of me knew that I should politely decline. Maintain professional distance, completely avoid getting involved in any way with someone whose dog had been shot in a terrifying crossfire. But another part of me, the part that had been completely dormant for the past 10 years, felt a small, undeniably intriguing spark of curiosity. When was the last time I had actually dressed up, attended an event that wasn't a required school function for Lily? When had I last done anything just for myself? Maybe, I admitted reluctantly, Lily would absolutely love it. She's been incredibly patient, spending all of her free time here at the clinic because I simply can't afford a sitter. Then go, Sarah urged. One night won't hurt anyone, and it's for charity. What's the worst that could possibly happen? I really should have known better than to ask that specific question, even hypothetically. The universe often had a particularly dark sense of humor about such things. The beautiful dress arrived a mere 2 days later, hand-delivered to my apartment by a courier. Deep red silk, elegant without being overly ostentatious, with a perfectly matching wrap and shoes that were undeniably in my exact size. Tucked carefully inside the box was another note. Saturday. A car will collect you promptly at 7 p.m. He somehow knew my exact clothing size, my precise shoe size, and my private home address. The sheer attention to such minute details should have unnerved me far more than it actually did. Instead, I found myself impulsively trying on the stunning dress that evening while Lily diligently worked on her homework at the kitchen table. You look just like a princess, she breathed reverently when I emerged tentatively from the bedroom. It's too much, I said, carefully studying myself in the mirror, but I still didn't take the beautiful dress off. Are we really going to a fancy party? It's not exactly a party. It's a fundraiser to benefit local animal shelters. I smoothed the luxurious fabric carefully over my hips. Sarah offered to come with us to the event, to help keep a discreet eye on you. Lily's face instantly lit up with excitement. Can I wear my Christmas dress? Her cherished Christmas dress was dark green velvet, purchased on clearance last January because it had simply been too good of a deal to pass up at the time. With her dark, flowing curls and Lucas's unforgettable eyes, she would undoubtedly look absolutely beautiful. Yes, sweetheart, you can absolutely wear your Christmas dress. Saturday arrived with the kind of crisp, clear autumn clarity that somehow made Boston seem even more magnificent, all bathed in golden sunlight and filled with crisp, refreshing air. I spent the entire day feeling oddly anxious and second-guessing my every decision. But when the car finally arrived precisely at 7 p.m., sleek, black, and driven by a professional chauffeur, Lily's infectious excitement was undeniably contagious. Sarah met us discreetly at the Fairmont, elegant in a charcoal dress that she had borrowed from her sister. "Ready for an adventure?" she asked, squeezing my hand reassuringly. The ballroom was absolutely breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers cast shimmering, prismed light across tables meticulously draped in cream and gold. Beautiful women in stunning designer gowns mingled effortlessly with handsome men in impeccably tailored tuxedos. I immediately felt utterly out of place. Just a simple veterinarian in borrowed silk, pretending to belong among Boston's elite. "Stay close," I murmured softly to Lily, who was wide-eyed and openly marveling at the lavish decorations. Massive arrangements of pure white roses and elaborately gold-painted branches created an entire forest of sheer elegance. We somehow located our assigned table near the center of the enormous room, Sarah deftly making small talk with the other guests while I consciously tried to calm my rapidly racing heart. This had clearly been a mistake. I simply didn't belong here. I should probably gather Lily and leave discreetly before. "Look at all the balloons!" Lily suddenly exclaimed, pointing excitedly to a cluster of shiny gold helium balloons gently drifting near the high ceiling. Before I could stop her, she had already slipped gracefully from her chair and darted quickly between the crowded tables, chasing after the elusive balloons with the single-minded determination of a child who had suddenly spotted something absolutely wonderful. I rose quickly from my seat, offering hurried apologies to our startled tablemates, and followed her through the throng of elegantly dressed people. "Lily, come back here," I called out, trying to keep my voice low and controlled. But she was undeniably fast, weaving effortlessly between the guests with the natural agility and boundless energy of youth. I briefly lost sight of her for a heart-stopping moment, and panic flared in my chest. And then I spotted her. She had suddenly stopped completely, frozen in place, staring up intently at a man who stood talking animatedly to a group of well-dressed businessmen. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a perfectly tailored tuxedo that undoubtedly cost more than my monthly rent. Dark hair subtly touched with distinguished gray at the temples, a strong, determined jawline, and an undeniable air of authority that somehow made everyone around him seem instantly diminished. I pushed determinedly through the final cluster of guests and finally reached Lily's side, gently grabbing her hand. "I'm so sorry," I began, looking up apologetically at the man. She just got excited about the decorations, and the carefully chosen words died abruptly in my throat. 10 years. 10 long years of wondering, of searching relentlessly, of lovingly showing Lily faded photographs and carefully telling her cherished stories about her absent father. 10 long years of building a life completely alone. And there he stood, Lucas Valentesi, undeniably older, harder, with fine lines etched around his eyes that definitely hadn't been there before, but still unmistakably, undeniably him. The same piercing dark eyes, the same undeniable presence that had inexplicably drawn me to him so powerfully a decade ago. He was staring directly at Lily, his face slowly draining of all color as he finally recognized what I had seen the precise moment she was born. She had his hauntingly beautiful eyes, his stubborn chin, the same distinctive way of tilting her head slightly when she was thoughtfully processing something new. Lily looked intently from him to the worn photograph she had undoubtedly memorized from the shoebox carefully hidden under my bed. I watched, utterly helpless, as the sudden realization slowly dawned on her young face, watched her effortlessly piece together the man in the familiar picture and the real man suddenly standing directly before her. "I think you're my father," she said, her young voice clear and startlingly certain in the sudden, absolute silence that had unexpectedly fallen around us. Lucas's dark eyes snapped back to mine, recognition and utter shock warring visibly in his expressive face. The entire ballroom seemed to collectively hold its breath. I found that I simply couldn't move, couldn't speak, could only stand there completely frozen, tightly clutching Lily's small hand while my carefully buried past disastrously collided with my carefully constructed present. His face went utterly pale, completely bloodless, as he stared directly at me. At the woman he had so callously abandoned. At the daughter he had never even known existed. Time unexpectedly fractured into a million tiny fragments. The surrounding noise of the bustling ballroom abruptly faded away into a white, indistinguishable static. Lucas continued to stare at me with an expression I simply couldn't decipher. His jaw was clenched so tightly that I could visibly see the muscles jumping nervously beneath his skin. The businessman he had been speaking with moments before silently melted away, somehow sensing the sudden shift in the atmosphere. The palpable tension that made the air feel suddenly charged and undeniably dangerous. Jessica. My name emerged rough, almost disbelieving. He took a single step hesitantly forward, then abruptly stopped as if some invisible barrier physically prevented him from getting any closer. His dark eyes dropped slowly to Lily, who still firmly held my hand, her small fingers gripping mine with increasing tightness as she somehow sensed that something was undeniably wrong. I finally found my voice, though it unexpectedly came out far steadier than I actually felt. We should probably go, Lily. Come on. Wait. Lucas's hand shot out quickly, not physically touching me, but effectively blocking our intended path. Please just wait. There's really nothing to say. The bitter words tasted like ash in my mouth. 10 long years of relentless wondering, of painstakingly building thick walls around the intense hurt he had so carelessly caused. And here he stood, in a ridiculously expensive tuxedo that probably cost more than I actually made in 3 entire months, looking intently at our precious daughter as if she were some sort of fragile ghost. There's everything to say. His voice suddenly dropped lower. Urgent. Not here, though. Somewhere more private. Sarah unexpectedly appeared at my elbow, her face pale but utterly determined. Jessica, maybe you should actually hear him out. I desperately wanted to flatly refuse. Wanted to grab Lily's hand and run, just as I had wanted to do a decade earlier when I had finally realized that he simply wasn't coming back. But Lily's eyes were fixed intently on Lucas with an intensity that made my chest physically ache. She had spent the last 9 years of her young life constantly wondering about her mysterious father, relentlessly asking me difficult questions that I simply couldn't answer honestly. Didn't she somehow deserve to finally hear whatever feeble excuse he could possibly offer? 5 minutes, I said coldly. That's all you get. Lucas nodded in tight agreement, relief flickering briefly across his tense features. He gestured slightly toward the nearby exit, and I noticed for the first time that Joseph was actually standing close by, his sudden presence no longer seeming at all coincidental. He had actually known all along when he had brought Duke to my clinic in the middle of the night, when he had intently watched me work with such focused precision. He had actually known exactly who I was. We reluctantly followed Lucas through the crowded ballroom, Sarah protectively trailing behind us with a reassuring hand resting lightly on Lily's small shoulder. People openly watched us pass, their obvious curiosity evident even through their carefully polite smiles. Lucas quietly led us to a private office just off the main corridor, wood-paneled and undeniably elegant, clearly set aside specifically for the hotel's most important and discerning guests. Once we were all safely inside the office, he closed the heavy door and slowly turned to finally face us. In the suddenly brighter light, I could much more clearly see the inevitable changes that 10 long years had irrevocably carved into his once familiar features. Harder, more deeply etched lines around his mouth, silver now subtly threading through his dark hair. A distinct weariness in his eyes that had certainly never existed in the boy I had so naively loved. "You're Duke's owner," I said somewhat numbly, because it was somehow easier than directly addressing the much larger truth currently standing so awkwardly between us. "Yes," he confirmed quietly. He ran a distracted hand roughly through his dark hair, a familiar gesture that I distinctly remembered from countless late nights spent studying together, from lazy Sunday mornings spent lingering in his cramped dorm room. "I really need to actually explain. You need to explain exactly why you completely disappeared," my voice rising despite my best intentions. "Why you suddenly changed your number, transferred schools, and essentially vanished without even a single word." "I was pregnant, Lucas. 3 months pregnant. When I finally, reluctantly accepted that you simply weren't coming back, His face visibly went ashen. Do you actually try to reach me? Of course I tried to reach you. My voice was steadily rising now, and I consciously forced myself to breathe deeply, acutely aware of Lily watching us both with wide, unblinking eyes. I frantically called everyone I could possibly think of. Your roommate said that you'd already transferred. Your parents' phone number had been inexplicably disconnected. It was like you had been deliberately erased from existence. I honestly didn't know. The whispered words came out somehow strangled. Jessica, I swear to you I didn't know you were actually pregnant. I didn't know about... His gaze unexpectedly shifted to Lily, softening noticeably in a way that made my throat instantly tighten with conflicting emotions. About her. Why did you actually leave? The haunting question I had silently asked myself 1,000 separate times, lying wide awake at night while Lily slept peacefully beside me in our cramped, run-down studio apartment. Lucas's jaw worked rigidly. My father, he found out about us. About the life that I was desperately trying to build for myself, completely separate from the well-established family business. He unexpectedly gave me a brutal ultimatum. Come straight home and willingly take my assigned place in the organization, or be immediately cut off completely. No more money, no more protection, no more family. And if I simply refused, he paused, his dark eyes suddenly haunted. He made it perfectly clear that you would definitely be in terrible danger. That anyone I actually cared about would instantly become a dangerous liability. So you just left then? Utter bitterness colored every single word. Without explaining anything at all, without even giving me a legitimate choice. I was only 22 and utterly terrified. His voice actually cracked. My father was not a man you refused. The things that he callously threatened to do to you if I didn't fully comply. He simply shook his head, visibly disgusted by the long-ago memories. I honestly thought that if I just disappeared completely, if you had absolutely no way to contact me at all, you'd eventually move on with your own life. You'd somehow be safe. Safe? I laughed humorlessly, the harsh sound actually jarring. I was utterly alone and unexpectedly pregnant, working 2 dead-end jobs just to somehow pay for vet school, barely managing to scrape by each and every single month. That's the incredible safety you actually gave me. I'm so sorry. The inadequately whispered words fell completely flat. If you had actually known, would it have honestly changed anything at all? I challenged him. Would you have actually defied your powerful father, stayed here with me, and openly risked whatever vague consequences he so readily threatened? Silence visibly answered me, and that deafening silence said absolutely everything I ultimately needed to know. Lily's small voice suddenly broke the palpable tension in the air. What's your name? Lucas unexpectedly crouched down to her actual level, and I noticed that his large hands were trembling slightly. Lucas Valentesi. I'm Lily. She simply studied him with the disarming directness that only young children effortlessly possess. You look just like the old pictures that Mom showed me. From back when you were much younger. What did your mother actually tell you about me? Lily glanced nervously at me, uncertain. I nodded slightly, silently giving her my implied permission. She said you actually loved us very much, but you had to go away for some reason. That it wasn't at all because of anything that I actually did, because I wasn't even born yet. She said, sometimes grown-ups just make hard choices. Lucas's dark eyes briefly closed, and when they eventually opened again, they were bright with unshed tears. Your mother was absolutely right. I actually did love her. I honestly do still love her. And you? His voice broke unexpectedly. You're beautiful, smart. I can actually see it in your expressive eyes. I'm actually 9, Lily volunteered. I really like animals. I actually want to be a veterinarian just like Mom when I finally grow up. 9? Lucas unexpectedly repeated the single number as if it were either a heartfelt prayer or a damning curse. 9 years that I've unfairly missed. First actual steps, first spoken words, actual birthday parties. You don't actually get to do that, I interrupted sharply, my own voice suddenly harsh. You don't get to somehow mourn the life that you willingly chose to recklessly abandon. You actually made your conscious decision, Lucas. You eagerly chose your father's vast empire over us. He abruptly stood up, fully facing me. You're right about that. I actually did. I willingly made the wrong choice, Jessica, and I've truly regretted it every single day ever since. But I can't possibly change anything about the irretrievable past. I can only. The sudden sound of shattering glass abruptly cut him off completely. One moment we stood in tense, almost civil conversation. The very next moment, the large window directly behind Lucas's elegant desk exploded violently inward. I reacted entirely on pure instinct, grabbing Lily and quickly pulling her protectively behind me as Lucas unexpectedly threw himself forward, covering both of us completely with his own body. More jagged pieces of broken glass unexpectedly rained down, and I felt the distinct whisper of something unexpectedly passing directly overhead, far too fast to actually see. Lucas's full weight unexpectedly pressed me firmly down. His strong arms quickly wrapped tightly around both Lily and me, shielding us from the unexpected danger. I couldn't fully process the chaos. "Stay down," he commanded sharply, his suddenly transformed voice now authoritative in an instant. Joseph unexpectedly burst through the partially opened door, his weapon already drawn, closely followed by two other large men that I simply hadn't even noticed at the charity event. "The sniper. Northeast building," one of them reported tersely. "Missed by mere inches. Get them out of here," Lucas unexpectedly ordered. "Back exit, use my armored car. Full security detail." "What about you, boss?" "I'll follow immediately. Just get them somewhere that's safe right now." I desperately tried to process what was suddenly happening as Joseph unexpectedly hauled me roughly to my feet. His grip firm but oddly careful. Sarah grabbed a silent and shocked Lily, whose face was now completely white with sheer terror. We were quickly ushered out of the private office through a previously unseen service corridor that I honestly hadn't even known existed, down endless flights of stairs that somehow seemed to descend forever. The garage underneath the luxury hotel was dimly lit, filled with row after row of ridiculously expensive cars that gleamed ominously under the harsh fluorescent lights. Joseph quickly directed us toward a large black SUV, obviously bulletproof by the very look of its reinforced construction. He impatiently opened the rear door, practically pushing us unceremoniously inside. Lily unexpectedly pressed herself tightly against me, her entire body now trembling violently. "Mom, what's happening?" "I honestly don't know, baby." I wrapped my protective arms tightly around her, my own racing heart hammering wildly in my chest. "But we're going to be okay. We're safe now." Sarah slid quickly in beside us, her drawn face tight with undisguised fear. "Jessica, this is completely insane. We desperately need to call the police." "No police," Lucas said, unexpectedly appearing at the side of the vehicle, breathing heavily. Blood visibly stained his once immaculate tuxedo jacket, though I simply couldn't tell if it was actually his. "They simply can't possibly help us with this. Someone just unexpectedly shot at us," I exclaimed, hearing the unmistakable hysteria creeping uncontrollably into my own shaky voice. "At my daughter, at Lily." "I know." His face was etched with concern. "That's precisely why you both need to come with me right now. It's not safe for you to go back home." "Are you out of your mind?" "I am not going anywhere with you. I'm taking my daughter home, and I'm calling the police, and they'll arrest you." Lucas's directness cut through the haze of my fear. "Jessica, the people who just tried to take me out saw you and Lily with me in public. Everyone there saw the connection. They'll absolutely use that against me." "Use you against me? Use us how?" But deep down I already knew. I'd seen enough movies, read enough news stories. Hostages, leverage, the innocent bystanders caught in the crossfire of conflicts they didn't even understand. "Please," Lucas's voice softened. "I know I haven't given you any reason to trust me. I know I have no right to even ask this, but please, let me protect you. Let me keep Lily safe while we figure out who ordered the hit and neutralize the threat." "How long will that take?" "I don't know for sure, days, maybe weeks. But I have resources, places that are completely secure. You'll be comfortable. You'll have everything you need. Except our freedom," I finished, the words laced with bitterness. "Except for the very real risk of being murdered by your enemies." His jaw tightened, I won't apologize for wanting to keep you alive. Sarah gently touched my arm. Jessica, I think he's right. Someone just tried to kill you. Whatever he's involved in, you're part of it now, whether you like it or not. I looked at Lily, at her pale face and wide, scared eyes, and felt the crushing weight of impossible choices bearing down on me. Go with Lucas and step into a world I'd spent the last 10 years desperately avoiding, or refuse and risk that whoever had fired that shot would try again, and next time they wouldn't miss. If we do this, I said slowly, each word measured. If we go with you, I need answers. Real answers, not the watered-down version you just gave me. I need to know exactly what kind of danger we're in, and I need to know why. Lucas nodded firmly. You'll have them. Every single answer you want, I swear it. And Lily's safety comes first, above everything else. Above you, above your business, above whatever vendetta someone has against you. Agreed. And I need to contact my clinic. Sarah needs to cover my shifts. My patients need care. I'll handle it, Sarah interjected quickly. Don't worry about work. Just keep Lily safe. I gave her a quick hug, drawing strength from her solid presence. Then I turned to Lucas, to the man who'd once broken my heart and walked out of my life. The same man who was now offering protection I didn't want to need. Where are we going? To my home in Brooklyn. It's fortified, private. No one gets in without going through multiple security checkpoints. He climbed into the front passenger seat, addressing the driver. Take us to the estate, and call ahead, have the guest suite prepared. As the SUV pulled out of the garage, I held Lily close, watching the city lights blur past the tinted windows. Sometime in the past hour, the carefully constructed life I'd built had completely fallen apart. The independence I'd fought so hard to achieve. The sense of safety I'd worked to create for my daughter. All of it, gone in the space between a child's innocent question and a bullet fired through glass. Lucas turned in his seat, his dark eyes meeting mine. I meant what I said, Jessica. I never stopped loving you, and I will die before I let anyone hurt our daughter. Our daughter. He claimed her with those two simple words. Acknowledged the bond that biology and abandonment couldn't erase. Part of me wanted to explode, to demand he explain how love could coexist with desertion. But Lily was listening, and I'd promised myself years ago that I wouldn't poison her against her father. Just keep us safe, I said quietly. That's all I'm asking for right now. He nodded, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes, and something passed between us, fragile and tentative. Not forgiveness, certainly not reconciliation, but perhaps the very first, hesitant step toward understanding. The road ahead stretched dark and uncertain, full of dangers I couldn't even name and choices I wasn't ready to make. But for tonight, for this moment, we were alive. Lily was safe in my arms, and Lucas sat between us and whatever threat lurked in the shadows. The mansion loomed out of the darkness like something straight out of a gothic horror novel. All cold stone and imposing iron gates that swung open silently as our convoy approached. Security cameras tracked our movement, discreet but instantly noticeable to anyone who knew what to look for. I held Lily even closer, feeling her exhaustion seep through her small, trembling frame. It's big, she whispered, her voice small against the leather seats. It's temporary, I assured her, even though I wasn't entirely certain of anything anymore. The estate sprawled across what must have been several acres in Brooklyn, set back from the main road by a winding driveway lined with towering trees that formed a natural barrier against prying eyes. The main building was 3 stories of pale stone with tall windows that gleamed in the floodlights. Classical architecture seamlessly blended with modern security features, creating an effect that was both elegant and fortress-like. Joseph parked near the front entrance, where 2 men in dark suits were waiting. Lucas climbed out first, speaking quietly to them before opening my door. He extended a hand to help me down, and I hesitated only briefly before taking it. His palm was warm, and calloused in a way I didn't remember from 10 years ago. The blue suite is ready, one of the guards reported. Mrs. Romano has prepared refreshments. Lucas's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly at the mention of the name, but he just nodded. Thank you, Michael. Tell her we'll need clothing for a 9-year-old girl and her mother. He glanced at me questioningly. I can provide my own clothing, I said coldly, trying to maintain some semblance of control. Your apartment isn't safe to return to right now. His tone was patient, but firm. Please, Jessica, just let me handle the details. I reluctantly gave him Lily's size and my own, hating the necessity of it, hating the loss of control this entire situation represented. We followed Lucas through heavy double doors into a foyer that took my breath away, despite my determination to remain unimpressed. Marble floors, a sweeping staircase, artwork that probably cost more than my yearly salary. Wealth displayed with the kind of effortless confidence that came from generations of money and power. This way, Lucas led us up the stairs, down a long hallway decorated with what I suspected were original paintings. He stopped before a door near the end, opening it to reveal a suite that could have easily housed my entire apartment twice over. 2 large bedrooms connected by a sitting area furnished in soothing shades of cream and soft gray. Large windows overlooked the sprawling back gardens, although heavy curtains could be drawn for complete privacy. A luxurious bathroom, visible through another door, featured a deep soaking tub and a separate shower. There's a phone by the bed, Lucas explained, pointing to the bedside table. Dial 0 for the kitchen, 1 for security, 2 for the household staff. Anything you need? Just ask. What I need is to go home, I said, but the protest sounded weak, even to my own ears. Lucas moved to the windows, checking that the locks were engaged. In the morning, we'll talk. I'll explain everything, answer every question you have. But tonight, you both need rest. He turned to Lily, who was watching him with weary curiosity. Are you hungry? Thirsty? She shook her head, pressing closer to me. I'm tired. Then sleep. You're safe here, I promise you. No one gets past the gates without my permission, and there are guards stationed at every entrance. He moved toward the door, then paused, turning back to me. Jessica, I know you don't trust me. You have every single reason not to, but I meant what I said. I will protect you both with my life. After he left, I helped Lily change into the soft pajamas that had been laid out. Soft cotton that fit her perfectly. Someone had anticipated our needs with unnerving accuracy. Mrs. Romano, whoever she was, had thought of everything, from toiletries to slippers. Mom, are we really in danger? Lily asked as I tucked her into the massive bed. I sat beside her, gently smoothing her dark curls away from her face. I don't know all the details yet, sweetie, but Lucas seems to think someone might try to hurt us because they saw us together. Because he's my father. The word still felt strange, almost surreal after years of abstract explanations. Yes, because you're his daughter and bad people might try to use that against him. Is he a bad person? The question I'd been avoiding since the moment I'd recognized him. Was Lucas a bad person? He'd abandoned us, chosen his father's criminal empire over the life we could have built together. But he'd also thrown himself between us and a sniper's bullet. Arranged this elaborate protection without hesitation. The truth was far more complicated than simple labels of good or bad. I think he's made some choices I don't agree with, I said carefully, choosing my words with precision. But he's trying to keep us safe now, and that's what matters tonight. After Lily finally fell asleep, I stood at the window, staring out at the darkened grounds. Somewhere beyond those walls, someone wanted Lucas dead badly enough to take a shot at him in a crowded hotel. And now, Lily and I were caught in the crossfire of a war we didn't even understand. My phone buzzed in my purse. It was a text from Sarah. Let me know you're okay. I'll handle everything at the clinic. Don't worry about work. I typed back a quick reply. We're fine. We're safe. I'll call you tomorrow. A soft knock at the door made me tense up immediately. I crossed the room quietly, checking through the peephole before opening it. Lucas stood in the hallway, changed out of his blood-stained tuxedo and into dark jeans and a gray sweater that made him look younger, more like the man I'd known back in college. Can we talk? He asked. Just for a few minutes. I stepped out into the hallway, pulling the door mostly closed behind me so our voices wouldn't wake Lily. Make it quick. He ran a hand through his hair, that familiar gesture of frustration. I need to explain about tonight. About who might have targeted us. Us? You mean you? They were targeting you, Lucas. Lily and I just happened to be collateral damage. No. His voice was sharp, almost angry. Once they saw you with me, saw Lily, you became targets yourselves. That's how this world works, Jessica. Family is leverage. He paused, taking a breath. The triad of the Green Dragon has been trying to expand into territory my family controls. This was their move, a demonstration, showing they could reach me anywhere. Triad of the Green Dragon. The name sounded like something ripped from the pages of a pulp novel. You're telling me we're in danger from an organized crime syndicate because of something your family did? My family has controlled certain operations in Boston for 3 generations. Import, export, legitimate businesses mixed with less legitimate ones. The triad wants in, and they're willing to escalate the violence to get what they want. He leaned against the wall, the exhaustion evident in the deep lines etched around his eyes. When my father died 2 years ago, I inherited everything of the business, the enemies, the obligations. You could have walked away from it all, couldn't you? His laugh was bitter, devoid of any humor. You think it works like that? That I could just resign, hand in my notice, and go work a regular 9-to-5 job? I'm in this for life, Jessica. The only way out is death. The blunt honesty of his words chilled me to the bone. Then why did you invite me to that gala? Why risk exposing us to your enemies? Because I honestly didn't know you existed. He met my gaze steadily, without wavering. When Joseph brought Duke to your clinic, he did it entirely on his own initiative. Our usual vet was unavailable, and Duke was in serious condition. Joseph made a judgment call. He reported back that he'd found a skilled veterinarian, competent and discreet. He didn't mention your name, and I didn't ask. The invitation was meant as a simple thank you, nothing more. Until Lily walked right up to you and announced you were her father in front of half of Boston's elite. I rubbed my temples, feeling a throbbing headache building behind my eyes. This is insane, Lucas. This entire situation is utterly insane. I know. He stepped closer, and I caught the familiar scent of his cologne. Something expensive that still carried a subtle hint of the cedar aftershave he'd worn back in college. But we're in it now, and I need you to trust me that I can handle this. I've already reached out to the Triad leadership, proposed a meeting to discuss terms. Terms? They just tried to kill you tonight. And I'll respond appropriately. But there are protocols, rules even in this world. They made their move, demonstrated their capability. Now we negotiate. I offer them something they want more than my territory, and they back off. And if they don't? His expression hardened, revealing a glimpse of the man he'd become, someone far more dangerous than the boy I'd loved. Then I eliminate the threat permanently. The casual way he said it sent a shiver of ice down my spine. You mean, kill them? I mean, protect my family by any means necessary. I've built this organization on strategy and intelligence, not unnecessary violence. But I won't hesitate to defend what's mine. Asterisk what's mine. Asterisk he kept using that phrase, claiming ownership of Lily and me with the same casual confidence he probably claimed everything else in his life. We're not yours, Lucas. You don't get to make that claim after 10 years of absence. You're the mother of my child. That makes you mine to protect, whether you like it or not. He held up a hand as I opened my mouth to protest. I'm not claiming ownership of you as a person, Jessica. I'm stating a simple fact. In my world, family is everything. And you and Lily are my family, whether you accept that or not. I wanted to argue, to fiercely maintain the anger that had sustained me through 10 long years of raising Lily alone. But exhaustion was winning, and the stark reality was that we needed his protection right now. Pride wouldn't stop a bullet. How long? I asked wearily. How long before we can go home? I don't know for sure. Days, maybe a week. I need to confirm exactly who ordered the hit. Ensure they fully understand the consequences of targeting you again, and make arrangements for ongoing security. He paused, his expression turning serious. There's something else you should know. I'm having DNA testing done. My back stiffened instinctively. You think I'm lying about Lily being yours? No. Look at her, Jessica. She has my eyes, my features. I know she's mine. His voice softened. But I need official confirmation for legal purposes. If something happens to me, I want her protected. That means documentation, inheritance rights, trust funds. She deserves the security my name can provide. The practical reasoning made perfect sense, but it still stung regardless. Fine, do your tests. But don't expect me to suddenly welcome you into her life as if the past 10 years never happened. I don't. He moved closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back slightly to maintain eye contact. But I am asking for the chance to know her, Jessica. To be her father, not just the man in the old photographs you showed her. Will you give me that? The question hung between us, heavy with implications I wasn't ready to unpack. Lily deserved to know her father. Deserved the kind of relationship I'd always told her he wanted, if circumstances had allowed it. But letting Lucas into her life also meant letting him back into mine. And that meant forgiving an act of abandonment I'd never fully processed. We'll see, I said finally, hedging my bets. Prove you can keep us safe. Prove this isn't just guilt or obligation making you suddenly care about a daughter you didn't even know existed until tonight. Then we'll talk about what role you can realistically have in her life. He nodded slowly, accepting the conditional terms. The suite has everything you need. If you think of something that's missing, just use the phone. Mrs. Romano manages the household. She's been with my family for 20 years. You can absolutely trust her. After he left, I returned to the bedroom where Lily slept, her dark curls spread across the white pillows, her breathing deep and even. She looked so peaceful, so innocent, completely unaware of the danger that now shadowed her existence. I'd built a life dedicated to protecting her from the harsh realities of the world. And in a single night, all those carefully constructed walls had crumbled. I lay down beside her, staring up at the ceiling, my mind racing through everything that had happened. The gala, the sudden recognition, the gunshot, Lucas's startling revelations about organized crime and family obligations, the casual way he'd accepted that violence might be necessary to protect us. This wasn't the life I'd planned. This wasn't the safe, predictable existence I'd worked so tirelessly to build. But as I listened to Lily's soft breathing and felt the security of the locked doors and the armed guards just beyond them, I had to admit a terrible truth to myself. For the first time in 10 long years, I didn't feel quite so alone. Morning sunlight filtered through the heavy curtains, gentler than I expected, given the circumstances. Lily's small weight pressed against my side, where she'd migrated during the night, seeking comfort even in her sleep. I lay still for a moment, cataloging the unfamiliar sounds of this house, the distant hum of activity that suggested a large household already awake and working. A soft knock drew my attention. I carefully extracted myself from Lily's embrace and padded to the door, opening it to find an older woman with steel-gray hair pulled back into an elegant knot. She was wearing a simple black dress and sensible shoes, and her expression was warm but undeniably professional. "Good morning, Miss Turner. I'm Mrs. Romano, the estate manager. I've brought breakfast and some clothing options for you and your daughter." She gestured to a cart beside her, laden with covered dishes and shopping bags. "Thank you, Mrs. Romano. But you really didn't need to go to all this trouble." Mr. Valentassi was quite insistent. She wheeled the cart inside with practiced efficiency. "He mentioned your daughter is 9 years old. I've selected several comfortable outfits, nothing too formal. Growing girls need practicality." I watched her set up breakfast on the sitting room table with the kind of seamless competence that came from years of managing wealthy households. "How long have you worked for Lucas?" 20 years. Since before his father passed away. Here, let me pour you some coffee." Her hands were steady as she filled the delicate china cups. I've watched him grow from an impulsive young man into someone who takes his responsibilities very seriously. He means well even when his methods are unconventional. The careful diplomacy in her tone suggested that she knew far more than she was ever likely to say. "Did you know about me? About Lily?" Mrs. Romano met my eyes directly, without flinching. "Not until last night, Miss Turner. But I've known for years that something haunted him. Some choice he regretted. Perhaps that was you. She moved toward the door. He's asked that you and Lily join him for lunch at noon, if you're comfortable with that. The stables are located behind the house, if your daughter would like to see the horses. There's a pony named Caramel that's quite gentle. After she left, I woke Lily, and we shared breakfast in comfortable silence. The food was excellent, far beyond the usual toast and cereal routine we maintained back home. Fresh fruit, warm pastries, eggs prepared exactly how Lily liked them. Someone had been paying very close attention to details I hadn't even consciously shared. "Can we really go see the horses?" Lily asked, her eyes suddenly bright with hope. "Yes, after you eat and get dressed." I sorted through the clothing Mrs. Romano had provided, finding jeans and soft sweaters in Lily's size, along with similar options for myself. Everything fit perfectly, a fact that probably should have disturbed me more than it actually did. We ventured downstairs about an hour later, following Mrs. Romano's directions toward the back of the house. The grounds stretched further than I'd realized in last night's darkness. Carefully maintained lawns gave way to meticulously tended gardens and eventually to the stables, which were constructed of the same pale stone as the main building. A young woman in riding gear looked up as we approached, her smile genuine and welcoming. "You must be Lily. Mr. Valentassi mentioned you might want to meet Caramel." The pony in question was a sturdy brown animal with intelligent eyes and a remarkably gentle temperament. Lily's face lit up as the handler showed her how to stroke his soft nose, explaining all about horses with the quiet patience of someone who genuinely loved her job. I stood back, watching my daughter's pure delight and trying to reconcile this idyllic scene with the dangerous world that Lucas had described. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter discreetly, but here, in the stable, everything felt strangely peaceful, almost normal. "She's beautiful with him." Lucas's voice came from behind me, and I turned to find him dressed casually in jeans and a dark sweater, looking far more approachable than he had in his formal tuxedo or his blood-stained suit. "Natural with animals, just like her mother." "Don't do that." I kept my voice low, acutely aware of Lily's proximity. "Don't pretend you know her based solely on genetics and 10 minutes of casual observation." "You're right." He moved to stand beside me, maintaining a careful distance between us. "I don't know her, but I would definitely like to if you'll let me." I watched Lily feed Caramel an apple slice under the handler's careful supervision. "She used to ask about you constantly when she was younger. Where's my daddy? Why did he leave? Does he ever think about us?" I ran out of ways to explain your absence without making you out to be the villain. "I am the villain, Jessica. In your story, in her story, I'm the father who wasn't there. The man who chose something else over his own family." He shoved his hands deep into his pockets, his shoulders slumping slightly. "But I'm here now, and I'm asking for a chance to do better, to actually be present." "For how long, Lucas? Until the next threat emerges? Until your organization demands something that conflicts with your newfound commitment to fatherhood?" I turned to face him fully, my gaze unwavering. "What happens when being a parent truly inconveniences your business? Lucas, what will you choose then?" His jaw tightened visibly. "I would choose differently now, Jessica. I can't go back and change the past, but I absolutely can control my future. Our future, if you give me that chance." Before I could respond, Lily called out, "Mom! Look, Caramel really likes me." We both turned to watch her, and in that moment, I saw a flicker of genuine, unguarded emotion on Lucas's face. Not the controlled mask he'd worn at the hotel or during his careful explanations last night, but raw, unadulterated longing for a real connection with the daughter he'd never truly known. "She's remarkable," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "Brave, kind, and endlessly curious. You've raised her very well." "I raised her alone," I corrected him, but the words lacked the sharp edge they once would have had. Anger was exhausting, and frankly, I'd been tired for so long. We spent another hour at the stables before finally returning to the house. Lucas had already arranged for a tutor to work with Lily on her schoolwork, ensuring that she wouldn't fall behind during our unexpected and extended stay. A kind, middle-aged woman named Patricia arrived with a suitcase full of materials and a gentle, patient enthusiasm that immediately won Lily over. While Lily was occupied with her studies, Lucas invited me to his office, a distinctly masculine space of dark wood and rich leather that smelled faintly of old books and that same intoxicating cedar cologne. He gestured toward a comfortable chair before settling behind his large, imposing desk. "I want to explain how things really work, Jessica," he began, his voice serious. "Not the sanitized version I gave you last night, but the unvarnished truth. You deserve to understand exactly what protecting you and Lily entails." I simply nodded, trying to steel myself for whatever startling revelations were about to come. My family has operated in Boston for 3 generations now, starting with my grandfather, who immigrated here from Italy after the war. He built several legitimate businesses, but he also controlled certain operations that stayed just slightly under the official radar. Import, export, distribution of goods that weren't always entirely legal. Lucas spoke about it all matter-of-factly, as if he were discussing the weather forecast rather than the inner workings of organized crime. My father expanded the empire. He diversified investments, built a network that had its fingers in everything from construction and shipping to even nightclubs, and all of that became yours when he passed away. Yes, along with the enemies he'd acquired, the territories he'd claimed as his own, and the obligations he'd created. He opened a folder on his desk, showing me photographs and documents that I couldn't fully make sense of at that moment. The Green Dragon Triad has been aggressively moving into territories traditionally held by Italian families all along the East Coast. They're after access to our ports, our distribution networks. They've been putting pressure on the smaller families, swallowing up their operations through intimidation and violence. And they seem to think they can intimidate you. They're trying. Last night was their opening salvo, demonstrating they could get to me anywhere. But they made a mistake by making their attempt where you and Lily could be seen. His expression became hard. In my world, family is sacred. To target a man's child crosses a line, and that invites retaliation. I took all this in, trying to figure out the rules of a game I never wanted to play. So what happens now? I've asked for a meeting with their leadership. It's set for this afternoon in neutral territory. I'm going to offer them concessions, territory they can have without any bloodshed, in exchange for them leaving my immediate family alone. He looked me directly in the eye. That includes you and Lily. And if they refuse, then I'll remind them why my family has been in power for the last 70 years. Not just through violence, but also through strategic thinking and the willingness to protect what we own, no matter the cost. The casual way he spoke about potential violence sent a chill through me. And yet, I couldn't deny the sense of security that came with his power. Will it work? This negotiation? Probably. They've made their point. I'll make mine. We'll come to an understanding that will allow both of our organizations to profit without any more conflict. He stood up and went over to the window. But there's something else you need to know. The DNA results came back this morning. I caught my breath. That was fast. I have resources to make these things happen quicker. Lily is mine, officially confirmed with 99.9% certainty. He turned to face me. I've already started the paperwork to establish her as my legal heir, with trust funds and inheritance rights that will protect her no matter what happens to me. You're moving awfully fast. I lost 10 years, Jessica. I'm not going to waste another day. His intensity made the office seem even smaller. I'm also setting up security for your clinic, for Sarah, for anyone who's connected to you. They won't be collateral damage in my world. The thought of Sarah getting caught up in this nightmare sent a wave of panic through me. She doesn't deserve this. She's been nothing but supportive. And now she's in danger because of me. She's safe. I've had people watching her since last night. No one will touch her. He came closer. His presence was overwhelming in the quiet room. You need to understand something. Everyone who's important to you is important to me now. Not as leverage, not as pawns, but as extensions of my family. I protect family, even family you've known for less than 24 hours. Even then, he slowly reached out, giving me time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered against my cheek, warm and gentle. I know you don't trust me. You shouldn't, given everything I've done and haven't done. But I'm asking you to try to let me prove that I'm worth trusting this time. The air between us felt charged with possibilities that were left unspoken. 10 years of anger and hurt were battling with the undeniable attraction that had never completely gone away and was now flickering back to life under his touch. I stepped back, needing some distance to think clearly. I need to focus on keeping Lily safe. Everything else can wait. Disappointment flickered across his face, but he quickly masked it. Of course, her safety is the most important thing. The rest of the day passed in a strange sort of domesticity that felt both surreal and comfortable. Lily finished her lessons. She was really excited about Patricia's teaching methods. We had lunch in a sunlit conservatory. Lucas asked careful questions about Lily's interests, her friends, her favorite subjects. He listened with real attention, storing away information about his daughter's life with the same focus he probably used when he was dealing with business strategies. I called Sarah during a quiet moment, assuring her that we were fine and that Lucas was handling the situation. She sounded relieved, but also worried, and she promised to manage the clinic for as long as necessary. He's really Lily's father? She asked quietly. Yes. The DNA test confirmed it this morning. And you? How are you handling seeing him again? I didn't have an answer that made any sense. I don't know yet. Ask me when this is all over. Evening came, and Lucas returned from his meeting with the triad. He found me in the library, looking at shelves filled with first editions and rare volumes. The tension in his shoulders told me the negotiations had been difficult. It's done, he said without any preamble. They accepted my terms. You and Lily are off limits, declared as family under my protection. They understand the consequences if they violate that agreement. Relief washed over me. So we can go home. Not yet. Give it a few days to make sure they honor their word. But yes, soon you'll be able to go back to your life. He poured himself a drink from a crystal decanter. His movements were controlled. Unless you'd prefer to stay. The invitation hung in the air between us, loaded with implications. Why would we stay? Because Lily deserves to get to know her father. Because this house is safer than your apartment. Because he stopped taking a long drink. Because I'm asking you to give me a chance to be a meaningful part of your lives. I studied him. This man who had broken my heart and was now offering protection and a connection. What does that even look like, Lucas? You being a part of our lives while you're running a criminal organization? Lily having a father who solves his problems with violence. It looks like balance. It looks like teaching her that the world is complicated, that good people sometimes make morally gray choices for the right reasons. He put down his glass. I'm not going to lie to our daughter about who I am or what I do, but I can show her that I'm trying to be better, to build something legitimate for her to inherit instead of just power and danger. Our daughter, he kept claiming that connection, and each time it didn't feel quite as jarring. She already loves you, I admitted. She spent the whole afternoon talking about how patient you were while you were explaining horses to her. How you knew exactly which book she'd like in the library. You're becoming real to her, not just the phantom father from photographs. And you? His voice got even lower. Am I becoming real to you again? The question demanded an honesty that I wasn't ready to give. You never stopped being real, Lucas. That was the problem. I spent 10 years trying to hate you, and I just couldn't quite do it. I was too angry, too hurt, too busy raising our daughter to properly despise you. I started to walk toward the door, needing to escape his intense gaze. But I'm not ready to forgive you either. Not yet. I can wait, he said quietly. I'm patient when it really matters. That night, lying beside Lily in the enormous bed, I thought about patience and forgiveness and the complicated reality of loving someone who had caused me so much pain. Lucas had already destroyed me once, through his absence. Letting him back into our lives meant risking a whole new kind of destruction. It would be different, but potentially even more devastating. But seeing Lily's joy at finally knowing her father and watching Lucas transform in her presence, going from being a cold authority figure to a gentle parent, I started to wonder if maybe some risks were actually worth taking, if some relationships really did deserve a second chance, however cautiously it was granted. The The secure phone in my suite rang at 3 o'clock in the morning, jolting me awake from a restless sleep. Lucas's voice came through, tight with controlled urgency. "Get Lily and meet me in the panic room. Now, don't ask any questions, just move." I didn't waste any time being afraid. Years of being a single mother had taught me to act first and process it all later. I scooped Lily out of her bed, wrapping her in a blanket as she mumbled sleepy protests. "Mom, what's happening? Just be quiet, baby. We need to go somewhere safe." The panic room was exactly where Lucas had shown it to me during our first tour. It was concealed behind what looked like a linen closet. The heavy door swung open as I approached, revealing Lucas and Joseph inside. They were both armed, and both wearing expressions that made my stomach clench. The triad broke the agreement. Lucas said without any preamble, and he pulled us inside. The door sealed shut with a pneumatic hiss, the locks engaging automatically. "They've breached the perimeter." 3 vehicles, approximately 15 armed men. I held Lily even tighter, feeling her trembling against me. "You said they accepted your terms. You said we were safe." I was wrong. The admission clearly cost him. I could see it in the rigid set of his shoulders. They never intended to honor the truce. It was just a delaying tactic, while they were positioning their resources for a coordinated strike. Through the monitors that lined one wall, I watched the security feed showing men in dark clothing advancing across the grounds. Gunfire erupted, and the brief flashes lit up the darkness. Lucas's guards returned fire from their fortified positions, but the attackers just kept coming, with disciplined precision. "How long can we hold them off?" Joseph asked, studying the screens with a professional assessment. "Long enough." Lucas went over to a weapons locker, checking the ammunition with practiced efficiency. "I've called in reinforcements. 20 minutes, maybe less." 20 minutes felt like an eternity as I watched men dying on those screens. I turned Lily away from the monitors, pressing her face against my shoulder. "Don't look, sweetheart. Just keep your eyes closed." She nodded against me, her small hands fisting in my shirt. Lucas noticed, and his expression softened briefly before hardening again. "They won't get inside. This room is built to withstand a sustained assault. But when my people get here, it's going to get loud." "Why are they doing this?" I demanded. What could possibly be worth this level of violence? Control, territory, revenge for perceived slights that go back generations. He checked his weapon, his movements mechanical. "And now leverage. They know about Lily, about you. They think that taking my family will force me to surrender my operations. So this is my fault. If I hadn't brought her to that gala." "No." Lucas cut me off firmly. "This is their choice, their escalation. You're not responsible for the actions of violent men, Jessica." The building shook as something exploded outside. Lily whimpered, and I started to sing softly to her, an old lullaby that my mother used to sing to me. Lucas watched us, and I could see the pain etched into every line of his face. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I thought I could protect you both without this. I miscalculated their desperation. Save the apologies. Just get us through this alive." The next 15 minutes passed in an intense silence, broken only by the sounds of gunfire and the steady commentary that Joseph provided based on the security feeds. Lucas's guards were holding their positions, inflicting casualties, but the attackers kept pressing forward with suicidal determination. Then, all of a sudden, the tide started to turn. New vehicles appeared on the monitors. Reinforcements had arrived with overwhelming force. The Triad soldiers found themselves caught between Lucas's estate guards and these new fighters, who moved with military precision. "That's Anthony," Lucas said with obvious relief. "My consigliere. He brought everyone." The battle ended as quickly as it had begun. The surviving attackers retreated, leaving bodies scattered across the formerly pristine grounds. Lucas waited another 10 minutes, confirming that the all-clear had been given before he unsealed the panic room. Mrs. Romano met us in the hallway, and her usually composed expression was tight with concern. "The guest rooms are secure. I've prepared some tea and something calming for the child." "Thank you." I followed her, feeling too numb to feel anything beyond gratitude that Lily was still unharmed. Lucas stayed behind, coordinating the cleanup and security enhancements with grim efficiency. By dawn, the grounds showed no evidence of the violence that had occurred there. The bodies had been removed, the bullet casings had been collected, and the damaged landscaping was already being repaired. The machine of Lucas's organization operated with disturbing effectiveness. I found him in his office, staring at reports with hollow eyes. "How many?" I asked from the doorway. "4 of mine are dead, 7 injured. The triad lost 11. He set down the papers. "Unacceptable losses on both sides. What happens now?" Now I respond in a way that they can't ignore or dismiss. His voice was cold, and all of the warmth that I had glimpsed over the past week had disappeared. "I'm going to eliminate their leadership, destroy their infrastructure, and send a message that attacking my family invites total destruction." The casual way he discussed murder should have horrified me. A week ago it definitely would have, but watching armed men storm the house where my daughter was sleeping had recalibrated my sense of what violence was acceptable. "I want to leave," I said quietly. "This isn't sustainable, Lucas. Living like this, constantly under threat, waiting for the next attack. Lily deserves better than growing up in a war zone. You think leaving will make you safer?" He stood up and walked around his desk. "They know about you now, Jessica. Leaving just removes my protection without actually eliminating the threat." "Then what are you suggesting? That we just stay here indefinitely? That Lily grows up behind gates and armed guards, never knowing what a normal life is like? I'm suggesting that you let me eliminate the threat permanently. Just give me the time to dismantle the Triad's operations, to make sure that they lack the resources and the leadership to ever threaten us again." He reached for my hands, and I let him take them. "1 week, that's all I need. And then you can choose. Stay here where I can protect you both, or go back to your life with security measures in place. But don't make that choice now, not while you're terrified and exhausted. Wait until the immediate danger has passed." I pulled my hands back. "I need to talk to Sarah. Check on the clinic. I need something normal to ground me before I completely lose my mind." He nodded, gesturing to the phone on his desk. "Use my line. It's secure." Sarah answered on the second ring, her voice thick with sleep. "Jessica, is everything okay?" "Define okay," I said with bitter humor. "We're alive. That counts for something. I saw the news. Multiple casualties at an estate in Brookline, though they aren't releasing the address." "Was that?" "Yes. The people Lucas warned about decided that the negotiations weren't working fast enough." I sank down into Lucas's chair, suddenly unable to stand. "Sarah, I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to grab Lily and just run as far as possible, but Lucas says that that would just make us easier targets." "He's probably right," she said carefully. "As much as I hate to admit it, Jessica, you're dealing with organized crime. Normal rules don't apply. Maybe staying under his protection until the situation stabilizes is the smart thing to do." "When did you become Team Lucas?" "When I realized that he's kept you alive this long. Look, I don't trust him. I think he's dangerous and he's probably done terrible things. But he clearly cares about you and Lily. And that counts for something in this situation." We talked for another 20 minutes. Sarah updated me on the clinic operations and reassured me that everything was under control. Her normalcy grounded me, and it reminded me that there was a world that existed beyond violence and fear. After I hung up, I found Lily in the library with Patricia. She was working on math problems as if the attack last night had never even happened. The resilience of children never ceases to amaze me. "How is she?" Lucas asked, appearing beside me so quietly that I actually jumped. "Better than I am," I admitted. "She's adaptable in ways that I've forgotten how to be." We watched her in silence. This daughter that we'd created and lost and then found again. "I'm leaving in an hour," Lucas said finally. "Anthony and I are meeting with our captains to coordinate our response. I'll be gone for most of the day." "Be careful," I said, the words coming out automatically. He looked at me with surprise and something else. Something a little warmer. "You're worried about me." "I'm worried about what's going to happen to Lily if you get yourself killed playing Mafia war games." But the words didn't have a lot of conviction behind them. Somewhere in the last week, despite everything, I'd started caring about Lucas Valentesi again. Not the boy I'd loved back in college, but the complicated and dangerous man he'd become. I'll come back, he promised. I always do. The day passed with agonizing slowness. Patricia kept Lily busy with lessons and games. Mrs. Romano made sure that we ate, even though we didn't really have much of an appetite. I paced around the library, unable to concentrate on anything beyond worry. Evening finally came, and Lucas returned, along with a man I'd never met before. He was tall, with silver hair, and had sharp eyes that seemed to assess everything. Lucas introduced him as Anthony Pellegrini, his consigliere and right-hand man. Mrs. Turner, Anthony greeted me with old-world courtesy. I apologize for meeting you under these circumstances. Lucas speaks very highly of you. Does he? I glanced over at Lucas, who actually had the good grace to look a little embarrassed. He does constantly, in fact. It's become rather tedious. Anthony's dry humor surprised me and made me smile a little. I've known Lucas since he was 15 years old. I've watched him transform from a reckless boy into a capable leader. I've never seen him as focused or determined as he's been this past week. You and your daughter have given him something worth protecting, something beyond just territory or power. The insight into Lucas's private thoughts unsettled me. What's the situation? I asked, trying to change the subject. Under control, Lucas answered. We've identified the Triad's local leadership and their primary operations. Tomorrow, we're going to move against their infrastructure simultaneously. Within 48 hours, they won't have the resources to threaten anyone, and their leadership won't be a problem anymore, Anthony said delicately. I didn't ask him to clarify. There were some details that I preferred not to know. When this is over, Lucas and I need to have a serious conversation about the future, about what role he's going to play in Lily's life and what boundaries there are. Of course, Lucas agreed readily. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it. But first, let me finish this. Let me make sure that you're both truly safe. That night, after Lily had fallen asleep, I stood on the suite's small balcony, breathing in the cold autumn air. The grounds below showed no sign of the battle that had taken place just hours earlier. Lucas's world operated on these principles of plausible deniability and invisible violence. Problems were solved before they ever became public knowledge. A soft sound made me turn around, and I saw Lucas standing in the doorway. Can't sleep either? He asked. I just have too much adrenaline still running through my system. I wrapped my arms around myself. This isn't the life I imagined when I was looking at Lily's ultrasound 10 years ago. Single motherhood, sure. Financial struggles, absolutely. But not this. Not armed guards and panic rooms and watching men die on security monitors. I know, he said, joining me at the railing, but careful to maintain some distance. I never wanted this for you either. If I could go back and change the choices that I made. But you can't. I cut him off gently. None of us can. We just have to figure out how to move forward from where we are right now. And where is that, Jessica? Where are we? The question demanded an honesty that neither of us might have been ready for. I don't know yet. Ask me when people stop trying to kill us. When I can actually think clearly without fear clouding every single decision that I make. He nodded, accepting the non-answer. Fair enough. But for what it's worth, having you here, seeing you with Lily, it's made me realize what I gave up 10 years ago. What I lost because I was too afraid to fight for what actually mattered. Don't romanticize this, Lucas. We're not some star-crossed lovers reuniting. We're just two people who are dealing with an impossible situation while trying to protect our child. I know, but that doesn't mean that I can't hope for more when the impossible just becomes difficult. He touched my hand briefly, just a whisper of contact. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be easier. I doubted that, but I appreciated the lie. As I watched him go back to his office to continue planning whatever violence the next day would bring, I wondered if forgiveness was actually possible between us. If trust could ever be rebuilt from the shattered pieces of abandonment and betrayal. If love, once it's been broken, could ever truly heal. The answer eluded me, lost somewhere between fear and hope, between the woman that I had been and whoever I was becoming in this strange new world, where danger and safety wore the same face. 3 weeks after the attack, life had settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Lucas's retaliation against the triad, just as he promised, had been swift and comprehensive. It had been executed with the kind of precision that spoke to decades of organizational experience. I didn't ask for any details, and he didn't volunteer any. All I knew was that the threat had been neutralized. The triad's Boston operations had been completely dismantled, and their leadership was no longer capable of threatening anyone. I'd started going back to the clinic 3 days a week. I was driven by a security detail that was so discreet that I sometimes even forgot that they were there. Sarah greeted me on my first day back with a fierce hug and questions that I couldn't really answer about the past month. Patients welcomed me with the comfortable familiarity of a small-town veterinary practice, and their concerns about sick cats and aging dogs were refreshingly mundane. But my evenings were spent at Lucas's estate, a decision that I'd actually made consciously rather than out of necessity. Lily had really flourished under his attention, and her initial weariness had transformed into genuine affection. She called him Dad now without even being prompted, and the joy in Lucas's eyes every time that he heard that word made my chest ache. Tonight was different. Lucas had arranged something special, a charity event at the Fairmont, which was the very same hotel where our lives had collided so spectacularly. The irony wasn't lost on me as I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the emerald silk gown that he'd sent. I had taken Mrs. Romano's advice and had avoided the predictable navy. "You look beautiful, Mom," Lily said from her spot on my bed, where she was supposedly doing her homework, but was really mostly just watching me get ready. "You think so?" I smoothed the fabric over my hips, still trying to get used to wearing clothing that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "Dad's going to think so, too." She grinned. Her matchmaking was obvious. Even though she was only 9 years old, Lucas had given her that confidence, that security of knowing that both of her parents wanted her and that they even wanted each other. Terrified me how quickly we'd all just adapted to this new reality. A knock at the suite door announced Lucas himself, looking absolutely devastating in a charcoal suit that emphasized his broad shoulders. His eyes swept over me with an appreciation that sent heat flooding all throughout my body. "You're stunning," he said simply. "Are you ready?" "As ready as I'll ever be to return to the scene of our first disaster." I grabbed my wrap and kissed Lily goodbye. Mrs. Romano would supervise her evening routine with the kind of efficiency that had become more comforting than intrusive. The drive to the Fairmont passed in comfortable silence. Lucas's hand rested on mine, a casual intimacy that we had developed over weeks of shared dinners and quiet conversations after Lily had gone to bed. We hadn't really talked about what we were becoming. We just preferred to let the relationship evolve without any pressure or expectations. The ballroom looked different from what I remembered. Or maybe it was just me who was different. Instead of feeling out of place, I moved through the crowd with Lucas at my side, meeting his business associates and their wives with the composure that I had learned from watching him navigate these kinds of social waters. "Jessica." A familiar voice made me turn around, and I saw Sarah approaching, looking absolutely stunning in a charcoal dress that really brought out the color in her dark eyes. "Lucas invited me. I hope you don't mind." "Mind? I'm thrilled." I hugged her, feeling really grateful for the anchor of friendship in this sea of strangers. "You look amazing." "You do too. This whole situation suits you better than I expected." She glanced at Lucas, who'd been pulled into conversation with a state senator. "He really cares about you, you know. It's obvious to anyone watching." Before I could respond, a man approached our group, silver-haired and distinguished, with the kind of presence that commanded attention. Lucas stiffened almost imperceptibly beside me, his hand finding the small of my back in a protective gesture. "Lucas," the man greeted him with cool civility. "I heard about your troubles with the triad. Unfortunate business, Franco. I didn't expect to see you here." Lucas's voice was carefully neutral. "I'm a patron of animal welfare, same as anyone." Franco's eyes shifted to me, assessing. "And this must be the woman who's captured Boston's most eligible bachelor. Jessica Turner, if the rumors are accurate." Something in his tone set my nerves on edge. Lucas's tension radiated through his touch on my back. "This is a social event," he said quietly. "Let's keep it that way." "Of course. I merely wanted to offer congratulations on your new family situation." A daughter, I understand. 9 years old. Franco's smile didn't reach his eyes. It must be challenging discovering fatherhood so unexpectedly. It's been a blessing, I interjected, unwilling to let this man's subtle menace go unchallenged. Lily is remarkable, and Lucas has been wonderful with her. Franco's attention returned to Lucas. We should talk business sometime soon. There are matters from the old days that require addressing. Your father and I had an understanding that I believe you've been ignoring. My father's understandings died with him, Lucas replied coldly. I run things differently. Yes, I've noticed. More legitimate, more cautious. Some might say softer. Franco's implications were clear. It makes one wonder if domestic life has weakened your instincts. The temperature around us seemed to drop. Other guests noticed the tension. Conversations faltering as attention shifted toward our group. Lucas's hand on my back pressed slightly. A signal I'd learned meant he wanted me to step away from potential conflict. If you'll excuse us, Lucas said smoothly. I promised Jessica a dance. He guided me toward the dance floor before Franco could respond. His movements controlled but urgent. Once we were surrounded by other couples, he pulled me close, his jaw tight with suppressed anger. Who is he? I asked quietly. Franco Caruso, an old associate of my father's who thought he had permanent influence over family operations. Lucas's voice was low, meant only for me. He's been pushing for meetings, trying to leverage past agreements into current power. I've been refusing, and he's not taking it well. What kind of agreements? The kind that involved questionable business practices and moral compromises my father was willing to make. I'm not. His eyes met mine. I meant what I told you, Jessica. I'm transitioning operations toward legitimacy. Franco represents everything I'm trying to leave behind. Will he be a problem? Probably, but nothing I can't handle. He pulled me closer as the music swelled. I won't let him threaten what we're building. Not our family, not our future. Our family, our future. The possessive pronouns felt less jarring each time he used them. What are we building, Lucas? I asked, needing to name the undefined thing between us. Something real, he said simply. Something worth protecting. Unless you want something different. The question demanded honesty I'd been avoiding. I don't know what I want anymore. A month ago I had my life planned out. Single mother, dedicated veterinarian, small apartment and smaller dreams. Now I'm living in a mansion, wearing designer gowns, and falling for the man who broke my heart 10 years ago. Falling for? He pulled back slightly to see my face. Present tense. Don't look so smug. But I couldn't stop the smile tugging at my lips. I'm terrified, Lucas, of trusting you again, of Lily getting hurt, of this world you live in. But I'm also happier than I've been in years. That scares me most of all. It scares me too, he admitted. Every morning I wake up certain you'll realize you deserve better than a former criminal trying to go legitimate. That you'll take Lily and leave, and I'll lose you both again. His hand cupped my cheek. But I'm asking you to take the risk anyway to give us a real chance. Before I could respond, the music ended, and polite applause rippled through the ballroom. Lucas led me off the dance floor, his hands still clasped in mine. Sarah found us near the bar, her expression concerned. That man who was talking to you earlier, Franco something? He's been watching you both all night. It's creepy. I followed her gaze to find Franco indeed staring at us from across the room, his expression calculating. Unease prickled down my spine. Lucas says he's an old associate causing problems. He looks like the kind of problem that doesn't go away easily, Sarah observed. She wasn't wrong. Over the next hour, Franco made his presence known through subtle intimidation. Casual comments to mutual acquaintances about Lucas's management style. Questions about my relationship with Lucas that bordered on inappropriate. By the time we left the event, my nerves were frayed, and Lucas's controlled fury was evident in every rigid line of his body. He's going to escalate, Lucas said during the drive home. That display tonight was a warning shot. Franco wants me to know he can reach me, reach my family anytime he chooses. What are you going to do? Handle it, he squeezed my hand, but carefully, legally if possible. I won't give him ammunition to use against me, and I won't expose you and Lily to unnecessary danger. The next morning brought clarity to Franco's intentions. Lucas received an envelope containing photographs taken over the past 3 weeks. Me leaving the clinic, Lily at her new school. Both of us in the estate gardens. The message was clear. Franco had been watching, documenting, threatening. I found Lucas in his office staring at the photographs with an expression that made me grateful I wasn't Franco Caruso. He's trying to intimidate you through us, I said, stating the obvious. It's not going to work. Lucas looked up, his eyes burning with determination. But I need to handle this differently than I would have before you and Lily. I can't just eliminate the problem through force. I need evidence of his crimes, leverage to ensure he backs off permanently without escalating into war. How long will that take? I don't know. But I have resources. People who can dig into Franco's operations and find what I need. He stood, moving around the desk. In the meantime, I'm increasing security for you, for Lily, for the clinic. I'm not living in fear again, I protested. We just got past that with the triad. This is different. Franco was playing a longer game, using information and influence rather than direct violence. Lucas took my hands. Let me protect you while I dismantle his ability to threaten us. Please, Jessica. The vulnerability in his request undid my resistance. Okay, but I want to help. My life, my daughter, my risk to take too. Understanding passed between us. The acknowledgement that we were partners in this now, not just victim and protector. Whatever came next, we'd face it together with all the complicated, messy reality that entailed. 2 weeks into investigating Franco Caruso, I discovered I had a talent for research I'd never known existed. While Lucas worked his networks and Anthony deployed professional investigators, I approached the problem from a different angle, using publicly available records and legal databases to trace Franco's legitimate business holdings. You found something, Lucas said, appearing in the library where I'd spread documents across 3 tables. It was past midnight, but sleep felt impossible when I was close to connecting the pieces. Franco owns 17 businesses across Boston, I explained, pointing to my hand-drawn chart. Restaurants, construction companies, import firms, all legitimate on the surface. But look at the pattern of acquisitions. I traced the timeline with my finger. Every property he purchased in the past 5 years was previously owned by people who filed bankruptcy within months of selling to him. Lucas studied my notes, understanding dawning in his expression. He's forcing them out, creating financial pressure until they have no choice but to sell it below market value. Exactly. And when I cross-referenced with court records, 3 of those former owners filed harassment complaints before dropping them. 2 mentioned threats against family members. I pulled out another document. The complaints were dismissed for lack of evidence, but the pattern is clear. Franco builds his empire through systematic intimidation. This is excellent work, Jessica. Lucas's pride was evident, but harassment complaints aren't sufficient to neutralize him. We need proof of criminal activity, something that would interest federal prosecutors. What about tax evasion? I suggested. These businesses report consistent losses year after year, yet Franco maintains a lifestyle that suggests significant income. Where's the money coming from if not these supposedly failing enterprises? Now you're thinking like a prosecutor. He kissed my forehead, a casual gesture of affection that still made my pulse quicken. I'll have Anthony's people dig into the financial records. See if we can find evidence of unreported income or money laundering. Over the next week, the investigation intensified. Anthony brought in a forensic accountant who confirmed my suspicions about Franco's finances. The businesses were shells, funneling cash from illegal operations while reporting minimal profit to avoid taxation. It was elegant in its simplicity and absolutely prosecutable if we could prove intent. Meanwhile, Franco continued his campaign of subtle threats. More photographs arrived, showing Lily at school, me at the clinic, casual comments from mutual acquaintances about how dangerous Boston could be for unprotected families. The message was always the same. Lucas couldn't keep us safe forever. He's escalating, I told Lucas one evening as we reviewed the latest envelope of surveillance photos. These are more invasive than before. Closer shots, more detailed locations. I know. Lucas's voice was tight with controlled fury. He wants me to react emotionally, to make a mistake he can exploit. But we're close, Jessica. The accountant found offshore accounts tied to Franco's primary shell corporation. With that evidence, we can build a case strong enough for the federal prosecutors to act. How long? Days? Maybe a week. Anthony is coordinating with contacts in the FBI, ensuring the evidence gets to the right people. He pulled me close, his embrace protective and reassuring. I promised I'd handle this legally, without unnecessary violence. I'm keeping that promise. The break came unexpectedly. Franco, confident in his untouchability, made an error. One of his enforcers approached a business owner Sarah knew, a woman who operated a pet supply store near my clinic. The enforcer threatened her family unless she sold her property to Franco at a fraction of its value. And unlike previous victims, she recorded the conversation. Sarah brought her to me, and together we brought her to Lucas. The recording was damning, clear evidence of extortion tied directly to Franco's organization. Combined with the financial evidence of tax evasion and money laundering, it was exactly what we needed. This woman is incredibly brave, Lucas told me after listening to the recording. But she's also now in danger. Franco will retaliate if he discovers she went to authorities. Then we protect her, I said firmly. The same way you protect us. She doesn't suffer for doing the right thing. Lucas nodded, already making arrangements for a security detail. Watching him coordinate protection for a stranger, seeing him choose the legal path over expedient violence, I realized how much he'd changed. Or perhaps how much I'd learned about the man he truly was beneath the dangerous reputation. The federal arrests came on a Wednesday morning. FBI agents raided Franco's businesses simultaneously, seizing records and arresting key personnel on charges of extortion, tax evasion, and money laundering. Franco himself was taken from his home in handcuffs, his carefully constructed facade of respectability crumbling under the weight of evidence we'd helped compile. I watched the news coverage with Lily, who didn't fully understand what was happening but sensed my relief. Is that the bad man who was bothering us? She asked, pointing to footage of Franco being led into federal custody. Yes, sweetheart, but he can't bother anyone anymore. The police have him now. Lucas joined us, wrapping his arms around both of us from behind. It's over, he said quietly. The prosecutors have enough evidence to ensure Franco spends the next decade in prison. His organization is dismantled, his assets frozen. He's no longer a threat. You did it, I said, turning in his embrace. You handled it exactly the way you promised, legally, without unnecessary violence. We did it, he corrected. Your research, Sarah's contact, that brave woman who recorded the extortion. This was a team effort, Jessica. And it proves something important. What's that? That I can operate differently. That building something legitimate, relying on law and evidence instead of force. It works. It's what I want for Lily's future. A family business she can be proud of. Not an empire built on fear. The words moved me more than I expected. Lucas was choosing a different path, not just for himself, but for our daughter, for the family we were becoming. That night, after Lily went to bed, Lucas and I sat in the library with Sarah and Anthony, celebrating the successful resolution of the Franco situation. Sarah looked between Lucas and me with knowing eyes. You two have come a long way from that first night at the gala, she observed. Jessica's less terrified. Lucas is less intimidating. And Lily has both parents who clearly adore her. It's been a journey. I agreed, my hand finding Lucas's automatically. So what happens now? Anthony asked. With Franco neutralized and the triad destroyed, you have breathing room, Lucas. Time to make decisions about the future without immediate threats forcing your hand. Lucas looked at me, the question in his eyes clear. That depends on Jessica, on what she wants for her life, for Lily's life. I've made my position clear. I want them here permanently, but that choice belongs to her. All eyes turned to me, waiting for an answer I'd been avoiding for weeks. Did I want to continue this strange new life with Lucas, accept his world, his protection, his love, or return to the independence I'd fought so hard to maintain? The answer surprised me with its clarity. I want to stay, I said quietly, Not because I'm afraid or dependent, but because this is where we belong. Lily deserves to know her father, and I deserve a second chance at loving you. It won't always be easy, and we'll have to figure out boundaries and expectations. But yes, Lucas, I want to build a life with you. The joy in his expression was unguarded, transforming him from dangerous authority to the man I'd fallen in love with a decade ago. He pulled me close, kissing me with a tenderness that promised futures and family and forever. Sarah cleared her throat delicately. I think that's my cue to leave. Congratulations, you crazy kids. Call me tomorrow, Jessica. After she and Anthony departed, Lucas and I sat in comfortable silence, his arm around my shoulders, my head on his chest. There's something I need to tell you, he said eventually, about my plans for the business. I looked up at him. What plans? I'm transitioning everything to legitimate operations within the next 2 years. Hotels, real estate development, import companies that only handle legal goods. Anthony will manage the dismantling of remaining criminal enterprises. By the time Lily is 11, she'll inherit a completely clean organization. The magnitude of what he was offering took my breath away. That's a huge undertaking. Your entire empire, everything your father and grandfather built, isn't worth losing you and Lily. His voice was firm, certain. I've spent 10 years building power, and it's hollow without family to share it with. I want Lily to grow up proud of what we do, not ashamed or afraid. That means changing everything from the ground up. I kissed him, pouring 10 years of love and loss and hope into that single connection. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were dark with desire and something deeper. I love you, Jessica Turner, he said. I loved you 10 years ago and I love you now. Will you marry me? Not because of Lily, not because of security, but because you're the only woman I've ever wanted to spend my life with. The proposal was imperfect, spontaneous, utterly sincere. Yes, I whispered. Yes, Lucas Valentesi. I'll marry you. His smile could have lit the entire city. We had challenges ahead, adjustments to make, a life to build from the fragments of past mistakes. But for the first time since he disappeared a decade ago, I believed in our future together. Believed that love, however broken, could heal if given the chance. 6 months after Lucas proposed, we stood in the estate's garden, where the staff had transformed the grounds into something magical. White roses climbed trellises specially constructed for the occasion. Champagne petals scattered across a makeshift aisle, and intimate seating for the 40 guests we'd invited suggested celebration rather than spectacle. I wore ivory silk that caught the afternoon light, elegant without being ostentatious. Sarah had helped me choose it from 3 options Lucas provided. Her enthusiasm infectious as she declared me the most beautiful bride she'd ever seen. My hands trembled slightly as Mrs. Romano adjusted my veil, offering the kind of maternal support I'd missed since my mother's death. You look radiant, dear, she said with genuine warmth. Mr. Valentesi has been pacing since dawn. I've never seen him so nervous. The thought of Lucas nervous made me smile. In the months since his proposal, he'd been steadily transforming his operations, transferring criminal enterprises to legitimate holdings with the methodical precision he applied to everything. Anthony managed the complex legal maneuvering while Lucas focused on building something Lily could inherit without shame. My expanded veterinary clinic now operated from a larger facility Lucas had purchased and renovated, complete with state-of-the-art equipment and enough space for Sarah to bring on 2 additional veterinarians. The foundation we'd established together provided free care to rescue animals throughout Boston, fulfilling dreams I'd thought impossible during my years of financial struggle. Mom, you're so pretty. Lily burst into the room wearing her flower girl dress, a confection of champagne tulle that made her look older than 9. Her dark curls were swept into an elegant updo, tiny white roses woven through the style. Dad's waiting outside. He says he can't believe he gets to marry you. That, she called him that so naturally now, the relationship between them growing stronger daily. Lucas taught her Italian phrases over breakfast, helped with homework in the evenings, read bedtime stories with voices that made her giggle. He was present in ways that mattered, building memories that would sustain her through life. Is everyone here? I asked, checking my reflection one final time. Everyone, Sarah confirmed, appearing in the doorway with her own bouquet. As my maid of honor, she'd been instrumental in planning this wedding, insisting on details that honored both Lucas's world and my simpler preferences. The string quartet is ready. Joseph looks remarkably dapper in his tuxedo, and Anthony has been crying since the ceremony started. Anthony's crying? That surprised me. Lucas's consigliere projected such controlled competence. Apparently, he's sentimental about weddings, Sarah grinned. Who knew? Come on. Let's get you married before Lucas wears a path in the grass. The garden had been transformed into an intimate sanctuary. Guests rose as I appeared, their faces friendly and welcoming. Associates from Lucas's legitimate businesses mixed with veterinarians from my clinic, Sarah's family, and the few friends I'd maintained through years of single motherhood. Two worlds blending into something new. But I only saw Lucas standing beneath an arch of white roses, his expression arrested as he watched me approach. He wore a tailored suit that emphasized his broad shoulders, his dark hair touched with distinguished silver at the temples. At 38, he'd grown into his authority, projecting confidence tempered by the humility of second chances. Anthony stood beside him as best man, indeed looking misty-eyed. Joseph sat in the front row with Mrs. Romano and Duke, the golden retriever whose injury had inadvertently reconnected me with Lucas. The dog's presence felt appropriate, a reminder of the unlikely circumstances that had brought us to this moment. I walked alone down the aisle, having no father to give me away, but needing no one to transfer ownership. This marriage was my choice, freely made, born from love rather than necessity. Lily preceded me, scattering petals with theatrical flair that made guests chuckle. When I reached Lucas, he took my hands, and I saw wonder in his eyes. "You're breathtaking," he whispered, voice rough with emotion. "You clean up pretty well yourself," I replied, trying to lighten the intensity of the moment. The ceremony was brief, officiated by a judge Lucas knew through business connections. We'd written our own vows, promises that acknowledged our complicated past while embracing our future. "Jessica," Lucas began, his voice steady despite the emotion I knew he felt. 10 years ago, I made the worst mistake of my life. I left you when I should have fought for us. I missed the birth of our daughter, her first steps, her first words. I lost years I can never reclaim. But standing here today, I promise you this. I will never leave again. I will protect you and Lily with everything I have. I will build a life worthy of your trust, a legacy worthy of our daughter. I will love you through challenges and joy, through doubt and certainty. For all the days I'm given, you and Lily are my family, my purpose, my redemption. Tears blurred my vision as I began my own vows. Lucas, when you disappeared 10 years ago, you broke something in me I thought couldn't be repaired. I spent a decade building walls, protecting Lily and myself from further hurt. Then you walked back into my life through the most unlikely circumstances, and those walls started crumbling. You've shown me that second chances are real, that love can heal even the deepest wounds. I promise to trust you with my heart, despite our history. I promise to build this life together as partners, not as victim and protector. I promise to love you fully, completely, with all the strength you've taught me I possess. Today I choose you, Lucas Valentesi, not because I need you, but because I want you. That makes all the difference. The judge pronounced us married, and Lucas pulled me close, kissing me with a tenderness that promised private celebrations. Later, guests applauded, Lily squealed with delight, and Anthony definitely cried. The reception flowed seamlessly from the ceremony, tables arranged in the garden beneath strings of lights that would illuminate the evening. Staff circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres while guests mingled. The atmosphere relaxed despite the formal setting. Sarah cornered me near the bar, her expression both happy and teasing. "So, Mrs. Valentesi, how does it feel to be married to Boston's most reformed crime boss?" "Strange, wonderful, terrifying," I admitted. That gesture, that single, simple, but significant act, anchored the wobbling ship of friendship in this unpredictable sea of strangers. "Wow," I stated, taking in Sarah. "You look absolutely stunning." I can't believe how great you look. Right back at you, she gushed, returning the compliment. But honestly, this whole high society thing is definitely your jam more than I ever imagined. I mean, just look at you. Her gaze shifted discreetly towards Lucas, who at that very moment was deep in conversation with some state senator. He's totally head over heels for you, you know? She whispered conspiratorially. Like anyone with eyes can see it a mile away. Before I could even begin to formulate a response, a man with impeccably styled silver hair and an air of undeniable authority materialized within our little group. His mere presence seemed to command everyone's attention. Almost imperceptibly, I felt Lucas tense beside me, his hand gliding to the small of my back in a gesture that was both protective and possessive. Lucas, the silver-haired man greeted, his tone carefully polite but edged with a certain coolness. I was so sorry to hear about your recent difficulties with the Triad situation. That was unfortunate indeed, Franco. I didn't expect to run into you here this evening, Franco, Lucas replied, his voice smooth and neutral, giving nothing away. Well, I'm a supporter of animal welfare, same as everybody else here, you know. Franco's gaze then slid over to me, his eyes lingering a little too long, assessing me like I was a piece of art in a gallery. And you must be the lady who's managed to ensnare Boston's most sought-after bachelor, he stated, a hint of something I couldn't quite place lurking in his tone. Jessica Turner, if all the rumors are anything to go by. That comment and the way he said it was enough to make my nerves prickle. I could feel Lucas's entire body tense up, and the pressure from his hand on my back increased slightly. This is a social gathering, Franco, Lucas said, his voice low and dangerous. Let's try and keep it that way. But of course, Franco responded with a disarming smile, although his eyes remained cold. I simply wanted to offer my sincere congratulations on your new family dynamics. A daughter, I understand. 9 years old, is it? Discovering fatherhood so suddenly must be quite the adjustment. It's been an absolute blessing, I interjected, determined not to let this man's veiled hostility go unchallenged. Lily is a remarkable child, and Lucas has been an incredible father to her. Franco turned his attention back to Lucas, his eyes glittering with something that felt like a threat. Perhaps we should schedule some time to discuss business sometime soon, Franco continued, completely ignoring my statement. There are lingering matters from back in the day that still need resolving. Your father and I had a mutual agreement that, frankly, I believe you've been neglecting. Any agreements my father had died right along with him, Lucas retorted, his voice now as cold as ice. I handle things in a drastically different manner these days. Yes, I've certainly noticed, Franco said with a sly smirk. Much more legitimate, much more cautious. Some might even go as far as saying softer. Franco let his words hang in the air, the implication clear. It truly makes one wonder if settling into domestic bliss has somehow diminished your edge. The very air around us seemed to chill several degrees. Other guests nearby, sensing the palpable tension, began to fall silent, their conversations faltering as their attention turned towards our little group. I felt Lucas's hand on my back press just a little harder, a clear signal that he wanted me to move away from what he perceived as a potentially volatile situation. If you'll excuse us, Lucas said smoothly, his voice betraying nothing. I actually promised Jessica a dance. Before Franco could utter another word, Lucas steered me towards the dance floor, his movements deliberate and purposeful. Once we were safely surrounded by other dancing couples, he pulled me close, his jaw tight with the barely suppressed anger simmering just beneath the surface. Just who exactly is that guy? I asked, keeping my voice low. That's Franco Caruso, an old crony of my father's who mistakenly believes he still holds sway over the family's operations, Lucas said, his voice low and directed only at me. He's been pushing for meetings, trying to twist past alliances into leverage for current power. I've been consistently refusing to engage, and he's not exactly taking it well. So what kind of alliances are we talking about? Pressed. The kind that involved ethically questionable practices and moral compromises my father was perfectly willing to make, he responded grimly. I, on the other hand, am not. He locked his gaze with mine, his eyes unwavering, I meant what I told you, Jessica. I am fully committed to steering our operations towards total legitimacy. Franco represents absolutely everything I am actively trying to leave behind me. So, this guy is going to be a problem for us? I asked. Most likely, yes, Lucas conceded. But nothing I can't handle. He tightened his hold around me as the music swelled. I absolutely refuse to let him jeopardize what we're building here. Not our family, and certainly not our future. The words, our family, our future. Those possessive pronouns no longer felt jarring. In fact, they were beginning to sound almost natural. So, just what exactly are we building here, Lucas? I asked, needing to put a name to the nebulous, undefined thing that was blooming between us. We're building something real, Lucas said simply, his eyes reflecting the soft light of the ballroom. Something absolutely worth protecting. Unless, of course, that's not what you want. That question demanded a level of brutal honesty that I had been actively avoiding up until this moment. I honestly don't even know what I want anymore, Lucas, I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. Just a month ago, I had my entire life neatly mapped out. Single mom, dedicated veterinarian, small apartment, small dreams. Now I'm suddenly living in a mansion wearing designer gowns, and apparently falling for the very same man who shattered my heart into a million pieces a decade ago. Falling for? He asked, pulling back slightly to look directly into my eyes. Present tense, you say? Don't get too cocky about it. I muttered, unable to suppress the smile that was tugging at my lips. I'm terrified, Lucas. Terrified of trusting you again. Of Lily getting hurt. Of this dangerous world you inhabit. But I'm also happier than I've been in years. And that, more than anything else, scares me the most. It scares me too, Jessica, he confessed, his voice low and raw. Every single morning, I wake up fully expecting you to come to the realization that you deserve far better than a former criminal trying to somehow become legitimate. That you'll gather Lily and leave, and I'll end up losing you both all over again. He reached up, his fingers gently caressing my cheek. But I'm asking you to take that risk anyway, to give us a genuine chance to make this work. Before I could find the words to respond, the music came to an end, and a wave of polite applause swept through the ballroom. Reluctantly, Lucas led me off the dance floor, his hand remaining firmly clasped in mine. Sarah materialized near the bar, her brow furrowed with concern. That man who was talking to you earlier, Franco something or other, she said, lowering her voice. He's been watching both of you like a hawk all night. Seriously creepy. I followed her pointed stare to find Franco. Indeed, staring directly at us from across the room, his expression unreadable. A shiver of unease crawled down my spine. Lucas mentioned he's just an old associate causing trouble, I murmured. Well, he looks like the kind of trouble that doesn't exactly go away quietly, Sarah observed, her voice laced with concern. She was absolutely right. Over the course of the next hour, Franco made his presence known through various acts of subtle intimidation. He made casual, almost dismissive, comments to mutual acquaintances regarding Lucas's management style, and he asked questions about my relationship with Lucas that teetered dangerously on the edge of being completely inappropriate. By the time we finally managed to leave the event, my nerves were completely shot, and Lucas's barely contained fury was evident in the rigid set of his jaw and the tense lines of his body. He's definitely going to escalate this, Lucas stated grimly as we drove home. What you saw tonight was just a warning shot across the bow. Franco wants to make it crystal clear that he can get to me, and that he can reach my family whenever he so chooses. So what are you going to do about it? I asked, searching his face. I'm going to handle it, he promised, squeezing my hand reassuringly. But he emphasized the fact that he would do it carefully, and legally if at all humanly possible. I will not give him any kind of ammunition to use against me, and I absolutely will not expose you and Lily to any unnecessary danger. The clarity of Franco's intentions became disturbingly apparent the very next morning. Lucas received a thick envelope containing a series of photographs that had been taken over the past 3 weeks. There were pictures of me leaving the veterinary clinic, pictures of Lily arriving at her new school. There were even pictures of both of us walking in the gardens of the estate. The message was unmistakable. Franco had been watching us. He had been documenting our movements, and he was, without a doubt, threatening us. I found Lucas in his study, staring down at the photographs with an expression of such intense fury that I was profoundly grateful I wasn't Franco Caruso at that moment. "He's obviously trying to intimidate you by using us as pawns," I said, stating the incredibly obvious. "But it's not going to work, Lucas." Lucas lifted his head, his eyes burning with fierce determination. "I need to handle this in a fundamentally different way than I would have before you and Lily entered the picture. I simply can't just eliminate the problem with brute force anymore. What I desperately need is concrete evidence of his criminal activities, some kind of leverage that will ensure he backs off permanently, without escalating this into a full-blown war." "How long is that going to take, Lucas?" I asked, my voice laced with anxiety. "I honestly don't know, Jessica," he admitted. "But rest assured, I have extensive resources at my disposal. People who can and will delve deep into Franco's operations and dig up what I need." Lucas stood up, circling around his desk. "In the meantime, I'm going to significantly increase security for you, for Lily, and for the clinic. I refuse to live in fear again, Jessica." "But I'm not going back to living in fear," I protested, my voice rising. "We just got past that with the whole triad mess. This is different," he explained, his voice softening. "Franco is playing an infinitely more complex game here, using information and influence rather than direct violence." He cupped my face in his hands, his eyes pleading. "Let me protect you both, Jessica, while I simultaneously dismantle his ability to threaten us. Please just let me do that." The raw vulnerability in his request completely undid any resistance I had. "Okay," I agreed reluctantly. "But I want to help too, Lucas. This is my life, my daughter, my risk as well." A wave of understanding passed between us, a silent acknowledgement that we were now genuine partners in this, not simply victim and protector. Whatever was about to happen, we would face it together, with all the complicated and messy reality that was sure to entail. 2 weeks into our collective investigation of Franco Caruso, I discovered that I possessed a previously unknown talent for intensive research. While Lucas utilized his extensive network and Anthony mobilized their team of professional investigators, I chose to approach the problem from an alternate angle, using publicly accessible records and legal databases to systematically track Franco's legitimate business holdings. "You found something," Lucas stated, materializing in the library where I had spread out documents across 3 entire tables. It was well past midnight, but sleep seemed utterly impossible when I was this close to connecting all the fragmented pieces. "Franco currently owns 17 businesses across Boston," I explained, pointing to the hand-drawn chart I had carefully constructed. "Restaurants, construction companies, import firms, all entirely legitimate on the surface. But you have to look at the overall pattern of these acquisitions." I traced the timeline with my finger. Every single property he has purchased in the last 5 years was previously owned by someone who filed for bankruptcy within mere months of selling to him. Lucas studied my meticulous notes, and understanding dawned in his eyes. "So, he is forcing them into financial ruin, creating unsustainable financial pressure until they have absolutely no other option but to sell to him way below fair market value." "Exactly," I confirmed. And then, when I cross-referenced that information with court records, I found that at least 3 of those former owners had actually filed harassment complaints before abruptly dropping them. 2 of them explicitly mentioned threats against their families. I pulled out another document. Those complaints were ultimately dismissed due to lack of concrete. "Ask me again in a year, once everything has truly settled down." "Fair enough. But honestly, I've never seen you this happy. Lucas is good for you, Jess. He brings out a bravery in you that you didn't even know you possessed." She was absolutely right. Lucas had challenged me to push beyond the boundaries I'd so carefully constructed around myself, to risk opening myself up for the chance of even greater happiness. Together, we were creating something that neither of us could have accomplished on our own. Dinner was elegant, yet still inviting. Mrs. Romano had really outdone herself with a menu that beautifully combined Italian traditions from Lucas's background with the American comfort food I loved. Toasts followed the meal, with Anthony speaking so eloquently about the incredible change he'd seen in Lucas. Sarah had everyone in stitches with stories from my years of struggling as a single mom. Then Lucas stood up, raised his glass, and looked directly at Lily, who was sitting at our table in the seat of honor. I want to thank everyone for being here and celebrating with us today. But there's one person here who deserves some special recognition. Lily, will you come here for a moment? Our daughter approached him, looking curious, and Lucas knelt down to be at her level, pulling out a small velvet box. When I married your mother today, I didn't just gain a wife, but a whole family. You are my daughter in every single way that matters, Lily. I love you more than I ever thought it was possible to love someone, and I promise to be the father you deserve, today and always. He opened the box to reveal a delicate necklace, a small lily pendant made of white gold. This is a promise from me to you, that I will always be here for you, that you can always count on me, that you're loved beyond measure. Lily threw her arms around his neck, in that kind of spontaneous, unconditional display of affection that only children can give. I love you too, Dad, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. There wasn't a dry eye anywhere in the garden. As the evening went on and the dancing began, I found myself in Lucas's arms, swaying to the music being played by the string quartet. The lights of the estate glowed warmly, and the stars were beginning to appear in the sky above us. And our daughter was dancing with Duke, making everyone laugh with her infectious enthusiasm. Happy? Lucas asked, his breath warm against my ear. Incredibly, I admitted, even though I never would have imagined my life would look like this. Better or worse than you had planned? I pretended to consider it for a moment. Definitely better, though I'm reserving the right to complain when your business keeps you out late, or when Lily decides she wants to join the family organization. She's going to run legitimate hotels and real estate developments, not criminal enterprises, he reminded me with mock seriousness. Completely different career path. Still intimidating. She has your eyes and your determination. I pity anyone who underestimates her. She has your compassion and your courage. Together, she's going to be unstoppable. He kissed my temple. Thank you, Jessica, for giving me this second chance, for trusting me with your heart again. I know what it cost you. You've earned it, I said simply. Every day you earn it. That's what matters. Later, as the guests began to leave and the staff started cleaning up, the three of us sat together on the garden steps, watching the stars. Lily was nestled between us, with Lucas's arm around my shoulders and my hand in his. A family forged from mistakes and miracles, from patience and persistence. This is perfect, Lily announced with the unwavering certainty of childhood. We're all together now, forever and ever. Forever and ever, Lucas echoed, looking into my eyes with a promise that, for the first time, I truly believed he would keep. Forever, I agreed, squeezing his hand. The future stretched out before us, unknown, but no longer something to be afraid of. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, as the family we had chosen to become. Love hadn't been enough 10 years ago, but time and growth had transformed it into something stronger, deeper, more enduring. We had found our way back to each other through seemingly impossible circumstances, and this time, nothing would tear us apart. This was our beginning, a hard one and precious one, built on a foundation of honesty and commitment that would weather whatever storms might come our way.